Hi, everyone. I'm Troy, and this is the Worsted Fibre Podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the first episode of the Worsted Fibre Podcast here in the new year, 2023. I almost said 2022. Welcome. I just wanted to start today by wishing everybody a Happy New Year. I hope that everything that you hope to get going this year gets going and goes well. I wonder if you have any New Year's resolutions this year. I do. I have a couple, and I will talk about them here momentarily. But how about you comment down below what some of your knitting or crochet or other needlework New Year's resolutions are. Are you going to be doing something like what I am? I don't know. Maybe waiting to find out. And if you do, edit your comment down below and be like, hey, we're doing the same thing. I'm going to take a quick second here to play with a few things here with the podcast, because now, since the podcast is no longer sponsored directly by Belfast Mini Mills, I am going to absolutely shamelessly plug the podcast and try to get the algorithm to really like this podcast, so that way we can really make it grow. That way I can justify spending as much time on the podcast that I plan to put into it here over this next year. So my New Year's resolution in that regard is that I have an upload schedule that I'm going to do my best to stay up on top of. And I think I've set it up so that way I can actually get this to work for me. You can cheat by looking here. Please don't look there. Since I don't have a Matthew keeping me on track, I have this. It's not a perfect solution. I'll come up with another solution here in the next few weeks. But if you want to cheat, you can see what I'm going to be talking about here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the new format that we're going to be doing here with our podcast. What I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be uploading every week. And it's going to be a different thing based on the day of the month. I'm still going to be uploading on Mondays. You may notice that this one has gone up a couple hours later than it normally does. I really enjoyed the 6 p.m. upload times there over, all of last month. So I'm going to actually keep going with that. And that will give me enough time to finish work, get home, and then make sure things are working properly. And if I don't have things that will take me away from the main podcast nights, I'm actually going to try to make myself available to come and sit in the group chat during the premiere of the first episode. So that way you can chat with me about what's going on here in the podcast. So you can see me down below or to the side. I think that side. Anyway. I'm also trying a different thing with the camera this week, so I can kind of see what's going on. Normally what I was doing was I've been using my cell phone for the last few weeks because it's just easier. And what I had been doing is using the back camera on the phone because it's a higher quality camera. And what I had been doing before was setting up, starting the video, sitting down, and then getting back up, and then going and recording a 5-second video for me to see if everything's framed properly. Today I'm using the front forward facing camera because it's still a high definition camera. We'll see how that goes. I'll be tweaking with that as I go on. Anywho, so the way that the podcast is going to work now is that I'm not going to be uploading the podcast every 2 weeks. I effectively am, but it's going to be a little bit different. So it's actually going to be a monthly schedule going forward. So the first week, like today, the first Monday of the month, I will be uploading a new podcast. So a typical run-of-the-mill podcast that we've been doing all along, where I talk about the different things that's going on in my life, and I talk about the different things that I'm working on, which we'll get to that in a minute, as well as a couple new things that I'm going to be doing every week. Since it's just me doing the podcast now, I feel like I need to break up a couple of the things to help not stress myself out about keeping finished objects in the queue every week or every second week. So what I'm doing here in this regard is that the first podcast, I'm only going to be talking about my works in progress. And then in the second full podcast that happens in the third Monday of every month, I will be talking about finished objects. I'll probably glaze over a couple of my works in progress that I'm working on at that time. If I've added anything, I'll quickly mention it. But for the first week, what I'm going to be doing is going into greater detail about the works in progress that I'm working in. I'm still going to talk about the yarn that I'm using, the needles that I'm using, the pattern that I'm using, all of those things. But I'm going to go into greater detail about what I like about the patterns, what I've changed about the patterns, and what I think I could do better the next time I do a pattern similar to what I've done before. I will also be doing a stitch tutorial every first week. So every first podcast of the month, I'll be doing a stitch tutorial. So it is basically just a really quick tutorial on how to do a very specific stitch or a group of stitches if it's something that's a really quick and easy one. I'll be going ahead and putting that information into the description down below, as well as discussing that in more detail later on. On the second Mondays of every month, what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be uploading the tutorial that I did in the first Monday as a standalone tutorial. And my plan for these tutorials is to be a slightly different format that you might find on other podcasts or other tutorials when it comes to stitching or whatever. What I'm going to be starting with is a very quick and easy, just a demonstration of what you're doing. It's going to be down on the screen. It's just going to tell you what to do in text. I will not be speaking. There will be music in the background. It'll be the intro music for the podcast because I haven't used the first 40 seconds of that in about 2 years now. I'll be using that music as the background for the tutorial. So it's a really quick and easy first 15 seconds. It's just a demonstration of how to do stitch. And then after that quick little thing, I'll put up like the Worsted Fibre Podcast title screen, and then it'll go into the full tutorial that I have included into this. So it's going to be kind of a little bit different. So if you're because I find when I'm looking how to do a stitch, like I don't need a big preamble how to get into the stitch if I'm just trying to refresh myself on how to do something. And I find that sometimes the tutorials that are out there, like they are definitely geared for people looking to do the stitch the very first time, right? So someone like me that is just trying to refresh something, I have to skip around the video in order to get what I want from it. So I'm just going to do the quick little demonstration of the stitch, no talking, whatever. It's just a demonstration text in the bottom at the very beginning, takes 15 seconds. So that way, those of us who are just looking for a reference can go and do that in the first 15 seconds and be done. And then have the full tutorial for us beginners or any beginner here. So that way you can get the full tutorial. Any tips and tricks and repairs and fixes and stuff like that will happen at that point after the tutorial or after the demonstration. I'm going to call it a demonstration. So moving right along, on the third week of every month, I will be talking about finished objects. And I'll also be teaching a skill tutorial. So this is a little different from a stitch tutorial because what I'm going to be teaching isn't specifically a stitch. It's going to be a different skill. So one skill might be fixing holes in lace knitting or fixing a dropped stitch or tension issues, that kind of thing. So it's not a direct stitch. Stitches may very well be, let me move that. Stitches very well may be included in the tutorial, but the idea behind it is that it will be a skill tutorial. Dependent on the month or the week or whatever, whatever I feel, I might be swapping one of those in for a spinning tutorial, so that way I can still have that covered. And I will also be throwing in some crochet tutorials and some knitting tutorials. What I do first will be entirely dictated by comments down in the description on previous videos, for the previous tutorial videos primarily, and on any of the main podcast videos. So if you have a request for a tutorial, I will do those tutorials first, the ones that are requested more often. So you can comment down below what you want to see first, or for the first skill tutorial that you want to see. I have one in mind. I might do that if there isn't enough interest in another specific skill, but I have a couple in mind. Then the 4th week, I'll just be uploading that skill video. And then finally, in the 5th week, when there are months where there are 5th weeks, this is going to be the biggest change. I'm going to be doing a project-based episode. So it's not going to be a full podcast like today's. It is just going to be a video where I show you in more of a long form of what I'm doing for a very specific project. It may very well be related to the masterclass that I'm teaching, like this month's project-based episode. I'm going to be discussing how to do, you know what? I'll talk about that later. I'll talk about that later. I'm not going to get lost in the weeds here. So it's going to be a project-based episode, more in line with what some sewing YouTubers would do. So like a Bernadette Banner, Nicole Rudolph, Abby Cox, one of those. I've been watching a lot of these videos with my new roommate, Jessie, because she watches a lot of them. And it's given me a lot of insight on how to produce a video and not to get so hung up on some of the details that I have been getting hung up on. One of them being lighting. So today I feel like the lighting's pretty good. It might be a little cool, but I'm using the natural light from outside, and it's a little cloudy today, so it's a little cooler than it normally is, and a little bit lighter than it normally is. So I do have my overhead light on and another light on the wall. And yeah, lighting will always be something I keep in the back of my mind, but I'm going to try to keep things more focused on the actual material that I'm trying to teach and the material that I'm trying to make content about, as opposed to the format of the content, like I have been somewhat focusing on, and like trying to be really minute with it, really meticulous with, which I don't think I need to. I am not a professional studio, so there are going to be some things that are going to have to be worked on. One of the things that I'm going to be trying to figure out here in the coming weeks is the sound situation that's in here. I do find it's a little bit too echoey in here. That is a function of how much bare walls are in my room. So I need to hang a few things in order to catch some of the reverberations throughout the room. But I'll be working on that, and I just need to figure out a few things about this microphone as well, because it's kind of it's a plug and play situation where, you know, it's really easy to use, which is why I bought it. But then I realized there are some things I want to tweak about it, and it doesn't seem to have that ability. So ever changing. Anyway, so then towards the end of those videos, I also plan on doing kind of like an ASMR sort of dealy at the end of it. So that way, if those of us who like to watch ASMR videos, they can have like a long format of watching me spin, for example, or watching me knit, or when I have to do my next long steek, I'll do an ASMR video showing exactly how to do that. And then do the video where I'm actually like cutting the stitches with my microphone next to it, so that way you can hear each of the stitches breaking. Yeah, so I got some fun in that regard. I hope you'll like the new format that we're going to be taking here. And if you have any questions, concerns, recommendations, comment down below. Let me know, because this will be for the next few months for sure, will be another new learning experience here. I've got some of the basics down, but now it's going to be real YouTuber time, I suppose. All right. So my other, so to be more clear about what my New Year's resolution when it comes to the podcast here is to really just put the effort in and to be as consistent as I can be. I think I've set myself up for success because I have it worked out in the old noggin of what's getting done, when it's getting done, and breaking it up into manageable pieces that I want to do. This month might be a little bit hectic because I'm doing a lot of things today because I wanted to have my vacation. But I have to quickly do something for the first project-based episode for the end of this month, because this is the first month that has 5 Mondays in it. So it might be a little bit, might feel a little rushed this month, but next month when we have 5 weeks, which I believe is May. It'll be a longer form video that's a little bit more relaxed because I'm going to be taking snippets of videos throughout the next few months while I'm doing a project-based class. So my other New Year's resolution, which was kind of my New Year's resolution last year, which is to use up some of my stash. So I am going to be taking part of the Maker's Dozen, and then I'm going to be posting that on my personal Ravelry page, a la what Kat Montgomery does with her. She sets up a challenge on Ravelry, and she marks things to be completed, and she has a challenge for herself. So I'm doing the Maker's Dozen, and I am going to be working to try to complete at least one item from my Maker's Dozen every month. So you guys can keep me on track. So that will be one of the finished objects that I'll be focusing on every 2 weeks. I do have some of the projects listed, or I have some of the projects picked out, and that will be listed down in the description there, as well as in the challenge page that I'm going to be setting up on Ravelry on my personal page. And those links are down in the description. Woo! Words! So I'm kind of combining the Maker's Dozen with the Great Joanne Whip Smackdown that Joanne and I are doing, because why not? I'll tell you what I've got planned so far. So for the Whip Smackdown, there are the 6 projects that we have decided. I went back and looked at her text messages and looked at a few other things to see what I had told her that were going to be my 6 projects. So one was the socks for Dad, which have already been finished. That the socks are currently hanging up drying, so I can't show you right this second. So those ones are already finished. The socks for Dad were by the Crazy Sock Lady, and I used yarn, Nerds with Needles yarn, in the color Earth Magic in their Nerdy Sock base. The second sock is the Freddie Beach sock, which is part of the Mal that we're doing here, and I would have had them finished for today, but I, as a silly, took them to work on the 23rd of December, which was the last day that I worked before the holiday. I don't go back until tomorrow. And I left them at work. So I haven't done any work on them since the 23rd. So that is going to be my work project. The next thing is my Raga sweater. I'm going to be finishing that there, and I'll be talking about it here in our whip section here in a few minutes. The next thing I've got listed is the Sylphide jacket. So that's the cardigan that I'm been talking about that I'm going to be making for my roommate Jessie, because she has started the 3-piece suit, and she's already finished an item and done a mock-up of another item for the 3-piece suit, and I'll show you that later. I'm going to be doing the Duck Duck Goose, which is just the little duck plushies that I've been doing, that I started 2 years ago at this point, just after Iris was born. Started and then did one duck, finished it, finished another duck, I just need to stuff it, and then I have the goose that's about half done. So really it's just going to be a couple afternoons of me just sitting down and getting it done. That's another thing. And then finally, the last thing that I have listed is the music hoodie, which is currently hibernating. I didn't have needles for it because I broke them, but now I do have needles, and I have some sitting down I need to do, because I think the way that I had planned out how to do this sweater is going to be way too complicated. So what I think I might do is I might just finish off what I have done, like the mandala, and then I'm just going to cast on my sweater and start working on the sweater, and then try to do like a pick up and knit or seam something together, or I might even just sew it directly onto the back of the sweater, and then just do the rest of the sweater as because the way that now that I have more experience and I'm less tied up about doing something very unique, I realized it's needlessly complicated. So I'm just going to make it a little bit simpler. And then, so that's 6 of the objects that I have for my Maker's Dozen. I have 3 others decided on. My next project is going to be the Ravishing Socks by Nancy Wheeler in the Nerds with Needles Nerdy Sock Base in Sea Serpent. I had started another sock with it, but I ripped them out. I think I ripped them out on the podcast. Anyway, the next thing is the Peacock shawl that I've been talking about and have never shown you. I have it here today, and I will talk about it and show it to you there. And the last thing is something that I started on Christmas Day that I just felt like starting. And this is another thing I decided to start, which we'll talk about that momentarily. So that's my second New Year's resolution, is to do the Haberdashery's Maker's Dozen. The Socks for Dad is not included in my Maker's Dozen. It's already been finished. I finished it before the New Year, so I still have 4 more projects that I need to come up with. I will decide on that later because I have a bit of a haul to show you for what I got for Christmas. All right, so the first thing I'm going to talk about for WIPs in progress is what is currently in my hands. I am working with a ball that I got for Christmas from Lex and Teresa there from Nerds with Needles. Thank you for this very kind gift. You definitely didn't need to do this, but thank you. Oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to fix that. Is it a mistake? Oh, no, it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. Never mind. False alarm. It's just a loose stitch. So this is Nurse with Needles. This is a DK weight. This is in the colorway Coastline in a DK weight. I don't have any other information on it, but based on what I can find on their website, this is a superwash merino yarn, and the colorway is called Coastline, which in the skein, from what I remember, it is like a skein done in thirds where one part is black, one part in this case is turquoise, and another part is white with turquoise speckles. I started this project there on, I think Friday? Friday sounds right. Where Jesse and I went up to O'Leary to go see a lovely little quilting shop, which I think is just called the Quilt Shop. The name and address is here in the description, so that way you can check it out if you live on the island, or if you happen to find yourself up in O'Leary, you can go to the drugstore and go down in the basement to find a very well-stocked quilting store, like shockingly well-stocked. It's huge. So we went there, and Jesse was driving, and I started crocheting, and I'm actually going to be doing this in Tunisian crochet. Here's my Tunisian crochet hook, and what I had done is I just started by casting on as many stitches as I think I would have needed to make a hat, and then I actually knit a hat using the honeycomb stitch because I really like that stitch. It's a really easy stitch, and decreased, and what I was planning on doing is just seaming up the back. So I did all of that, and I started without doing a brim. And it turns out that my side stitches aren't neat enough for me to simply just sew them up with a whip stitch to make it look good. Like when you're actually wearing the hat, like you can actually, it kind of looks like a corset that has been like spiral laced. So that way when it pulls apart, yeah, it just looked bad. And I tried a few other stitching methods and I couldn't find one that looked good. So I actually ripped it out, and since I ripped it out, I've decided that I'm going to do a proper brim first, because my plan before I ripped it out was to pick up and then knit a brim, but I'm going to do a crochet brim. So I'm doing a very basic brim here. I'm just doing single crochets through the back loop. I think I have got 20 crochet stitches on here. I'm currently using a 4.5mm hook. This is one of my Tunisian hooks. I just don't have the strand on it, so I'm just using it as a regular crochet hook today. And then the other hook that I've got here, I got my what would be a 24-inch cable if it was a knitting cable, but it's the medium-sized cable that I've got for the kit with the stopper on the end, and I'm using a 6.5mm Tunisian crochet hook for the body of this. Once I have finished the brim, once it's wide enough, since this will be a double thickness brim, it's going to be folded over like that. What I'm going to be doing is picking up the side stitches in the way that Tunisian crochet needs to be done, where you're picking up a bunch of stitches and leaving them all on your needle, and then I'm just going to start working back and forth, and then seam everything up at the very end. So, wish me luck. This pattern does not have a name. It doesn't have a design. Well, it has a designer. It's me. I'm just making this up as I go along. If it works out, I will write things down and maybe release it on another day. All right. So the next thing is my next whip is a spinning project. So there's this here. So this is This is a blend of Polwarth and silk in the colorway Drink the Kool-Aid, I believe is what it's called. I bought it from Good Fibrations. So this is one of Liz Miller's colorways, and it's a lot of fun to spin. What I'm doing with this one is I'm actually going to be doing a single ply lace weight for this. I thought I was going to do a fractal spin, so I separated my braid as if I was going to be doing a fractal spin. But I decided that I'm trying to do a lace weight with this. I was going to be doing a lace weight fractal anyway, but I really want this to be a really, really super fine lace weight as part of the project-based class that I'm going to be doing here. Yeah, so this is Polwarth and silk. I think it's about 30% silk, and I'm simply just doing a single ply lace weight. So what I'm going to be doing once I have finished spinning is I'm going to be, I think it's called putting a fold, or I'm going to be folding the fiber. So I'm going to be soaking it in really hot water, and I'm going to be whacking it against something while it's super hot to try to actually get the fibers to felt a little bit in the strand, so that way it's a little bit stronger. I am putting quite a bit of spin in here, so we'll see how that works out, because I also need to set the twist and do all of those things. I'm really excited for it. It's going to be a really psychedelic shawl that I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to be, I don't know exactly what this is going to be yet. This is going to be used as the project-based, as part of the project-based video that I'm going to be doing at the end of the month, where the project is spinning this. So I'll be doing a little video about how I decided doing this, what I'm going to be doing, and then I'll be showing you how I'm spinning, how fine I'm spinning, how I'm spinning it, those kinds of things. So that way you can see that. So that's my project-based class for this month. So spoilers. So yeah, as I mentioned, I did separate the braid as in order for me to do a fractal spin, because that's what I was planning on doing in the first place. So what I ended up doing is I took the braid, split it down the middle, and I've rebraided this one so it didn't take up as much space. And I put a little knot on the end like I do with my fractal. So what I'm going to be doing later on is I'm just going to be attaching the rest of this braid to this, so that way I can go ahead and finish my braid. I have a couple ideas of what kind of shawl I want to do here. Like I know the style of shawl I want to do is like a wedding ring shawl in like a Shetland style, where it's so fine that you can pull it through a wedding ring. But because of the colors, I feel like I should be doing something that's a little bit more psychedelic. So I might do something that is reminiscent of butterfly wings or reminiscence of mushrooms for a psychedelic trip. So that's what this is for. All right. So for the first update for the Whip Smackdown, I'm going to pull out my Raga sweater. So I haven't shown this to you in quite some time, and that's because it's been in hibernation for that time. So this is the Raga sweater by Violet McQuade. I'm doing this in Knit Picks palette. I'll be taking a better picture of this later, but I'll show this to you that way, so you can see the stitch work. I have picked up my stitches, and I've got these little stitch markers here from, I believe, Fox and Pine stitch markers. Yeah, so I've picked up my stitches. I'm ready to start my sleeve, which that's what I'm going to be doing here as my main project at home for the next little while, other than spinning. Yeah, I'm pretty excited for this. I think I just hit my microphone. I'm pretty excited for this. I just need to return to my pre-Christmas weight because I ate so much peanut brittle. Anyway, so I'm pretty excited for this, and I will finish this very, very soon. I've already talked about it so much before, so I'm going to move past the section where I talk about the pattern, where I talk about like the problems I have with it, because you guys are already well aware. Yeah, so I'm going to skip that for now, but I will move into another project that I haven't shown you before. All right, so this one, you can hear the jingles. So this is the Peacock shawl that I have been I've talked about for a little while. So I'm doing it out of silk. So this is silk. I believe it's called Iris. This is by Vijay Fibres. This is the silk that I used to carry in my own store back in 2017. Time is a weird soup. So this I'm using is a Toho beads. Miyuki beads, actually. I'm using Miyuki glass beads. These are 60 seed beads. And I believe the colorway is I think it's called like green opal. It's like an oil slick sort of thing. So what I had been doing is, or what I had done in the past, is I went through and I organized the different beads here, since they are like an oil slick and they're not just green, they're green and purple and blue. I went through and I sorted out the beads that are more purple, the ones that are more blue, and the ones that are more green, and separated them. Because when I put them together on my shawl, which it's hard to see this because I've got so many stitches on it right now. What I've been doing is I've been putting beads up the spine of each of the peacock feathers, and each of the spines are a different color. So since it's mostly green, there's eight feathers in this pie shawl. It starts from the center and works its way out. 4 of them are green, 2 of them are blue, 2 of them are purple. So it might be hard to see. I don't know if it's going to try to focus on my face or whatever, but I'll take a picture of this as well. But you can kind of see that one of my strands here is purple, and then the next one over here is more green, and these spines go all the way to the center. This is a pattern that is in my heirloom lace book that I bought ages ago from Knit Picks. This book here, and it is a lovely, lovely book. So it's obviously written for Knit Picks yarn and not Vijay Fibres yarn. So my shawl is going to end up being a little bit bigger than what this one was supposed to be, because this one was written for merino, I believe. Yeah, for the Knit Picks gloss lace, which is a merino silk blend. And mine is just silk, and it's actually a little bit finer than what this one here is. This is the pattern itself. And that gives you all the details that you need for this pattern here. So it calls for 4 balls of the lace weight of the silk gloss. I bought 2 balls of this stuff, and the yardage works out that I should be able to get away with it. But way back when, after I bought the balls and I wound them both off in preparation for this project, one of the balls was a lot smaller than the others. And I weighed them, and one of the balls, the one that was a lot smaller, turned out to be 87 grams or 86, somewhere in that range of gram, and the other one was like 103 grams. You know me, I'm pretty easygoing, pretty easy peasy. It doesn't have to be perfect. But a swing of 13 or 14 grams in the direction I don't want it to be is a bit much. So I contacted the company, and they fixed it up immediately. They said, yeah, we'll send you a new one. So they sent me another skein of this stuff, which is probably this one. It's a little haggard because it's been sitting in a bag and in a box for 5 years at this point. So they were able to replace that. And it was really, really good of the Vijay Fibres team to do that for me. Because they stand behind their product. It is nice, I want to say wool, but it's not wool. It's nice silk to work with. Very few flaws. And when there are flaws, like little tufts or like little slubs or whatever, they just pull right out. I haven't come across, at least in my memory, I haven't come across any like big knots or any major issues like that. My only criticism, which is just a criticism of all hand-dyed yarn, anything that's not commercially dyed by, or it's not made out of plastic, right, is that the colors will bleed. So you do need to make sure that the first couple washes that you do with any of the silk fibers from Vijay Fibres, that you do block them or wash them by themselves with a good quality wool wash, and maybe with a little bit of Synthropol as well, just to try to get the rest of that excess color out of it and to stabilize things. So what I'm planning on doing with this one is I'm going to wash it with some Synthropol in the water, and then I'm going to try to set it with some warm water and vinegar just to make sure that it sets properly. What you use to set the dye will depend on what the fiber is. So you can't just use vinegar to set dye of cotton or bamboo. Since this is silk, I'm going to use vinegar because that's probably what was used, some sort of acid to set the dye. But it's a really lovely colorway. It makes me think of peacock feathers, and that's why I'm doing the peacock feathers. The interesting thing about this is that there's some cool color pooling happening in some sections. So right at the very beginning, you can kind of see like there's a swirl of purple going all the way around. I don't know if it's gonna, does that make it focus on it? I don't know. But yeah, it's, I'm very pleased with how it's been going. It's nice to see that my most of my attention is still pretty good back from 5-ish years ago. I see some things that are definitely going to be noticeable once I actually start picking this up and working on it again. The tension is definitely going to change, but it shouldn't change too much. I will do my best to keep that as even as possible, but it's silk. Once I block it, those tension issues will be gone. This is going to be huge. I don't know how I'm going to block this yet. I haven't gotten that far, but we'll see. I am using my Knit Picks needles in the, I think it's 3.5 is what I've got in here. Let me just read that. Yeah, it's a 3.5. This is my nickel plated set that I had in my store, and I have it on, I think I have it on my 60. And let me just see if there's a connector here. I don't think there is. Yeah, this is on my, so this is on my 60-inch cable. So I have a very long cable that I bought for making my mother's blanket way back in the day. And that's where that's been. So I've got a 60-inch cable on this right now. If you are doing a project like this, though, you don't need to have a great big long cable. You can just buy little cable connectors. So Knit Picks and Knitter's Pride make them. We sell them down at Belfast Mini Mills. You can buy the Knit Picks one from their website. They're very cheap. They're actually cheaper than the cables themselves. And then you can use those to connect two cables together. Or if you have multiple connectors, multiple cables together to make a full project like this. I think what this will end up being is a wall hanging. And I'll just put it up on my wall, so that way I have something interesting on it. Yeah, so that's what I've been working on here. I don't actually remember there being too many issues with the pattern. It is a pattern that's written in like in a pie format. So I started with, I believe, 4 stitches, increased to 8, and then I started the chart. And then you can see, like, I started right there. So it's very few stitches. I started on double pointed needles, and then I eventually moved on to my longer needles. I don't know why I joined my yarn like I did, so I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to fix that, and how I'm going to join the yarn on this one, because this is the smaller ball that I had started with. So I have the other 2 balls. I'll probably use one, and then I'll use the other one for another project at a later point, but I've got both of them just in case. Very excited to get back at that one. And the last work in progress that I'm going to talk about today is I am redoing the Lost in Time shawl from Miho Crochet, because I gave the one that I made out of the Rambouillet from the Taproot. It actually ended up sitting in my room for months, and then I decided that it would be a good gift to give Jessie because it's very much her vibe. And I haven't even started her cardigan that's supposed to be for Christmas, because she's making me a 3-piece suit. So I made her a different cowl, and I didn't think that was enough. So I gave her the shawl as well, and she loves the shawl. So I decided that I'm going to do another one. This one in the Vijay fiber silk. So this is another color that we had, or I had at my store, another green color, and it's going to be a lot finer. I'm using a 2.75 crochet hook for this, and I'm just working through. So I've gone through 1 repeat of the pattern, so you can kind of see it there. I'll take a picture of it as well, and put it here. Yeah, it's going well. It's a little slow. Yeah, but it's a lovely. So far so good. I find that the top edge might be a little bit less giving less forgiving, less giving. I don't know what word I want to use there. It's giving me less stretch than other ones, but of course this is silk. There is no stretch to silk. Silk does not stretch really at all. So it'll be an interesting shawl once it's done. It'll definitely have beautiful drape. And once I've really opened up all of these stitches, it's going to look gorgeous. I have it on a little yarn buddy. So I wound this off using my cake winder, and this little yarn buddy that I bought is actually not a yarn buddy that is for knitting. I actually went to Indigo just with Jess, had no intention of buying anything. I think it was Indigo. And there was wrapping paper stuff. And one of the things was this wooden, this lacquered wooden thing that had a ball of like synthetic, like an acrylic cotton blend that had like shimmer in it. And it's supposed to be for twine, for like tying up your presents. So I asked her if she would use the twine for something else because I didn't like the feel of it. And I don't wrap my presents with that. And she's like, yeah, I'll use that for my presents. And I'm like, cool. So I bought this for $8 with the thread attached. And I decided that I'm going to use it for some of my cakes for things that, I'm not going to be pulling from the center here. I'm pulling from the outside. It does not spin. So I'm setting this on the floor when I work on this project, but the entire thing fits into my bag that Joanne made for me. I'm finding that I can touch the muslin a little bit more. My texture issue with it is starting to go away, but it's still there. I don't like the feeling of muslin. I think I rubbed it a little bit too much. Touch something nice. Yeah. So without further ado, because I know some of you will probably be sitting on pins and needles because we just finished our Maker's Cow. The idea was that I was going to be announcing the winner on our next podcast after the new year, and that's today. So what I ended up doing is I went and I counted all of the subscriptions. They all look lovely. The pictures are up on your screen here with the names of everybody. And it turns out that there was 5 finished entries there, and I had a 6-sided dice. So I just rolled the dice, counting 1 to 5, and then if I rolled a 6, I rolled again. And it turns out our winner this week is Knitting Nanny 28, who was actually the first person to finish their socks. So Knitting Nanny, congratulations for winning the Fibre Friends Mal, and your prize, which I will ship to you after I get your details, is this ball of hand spun. So this is a merino tops that we had at Belfast Mini Mills. That I had dyed in a rainbow fashion, and then I spun across the braid, the entire braid, and then chain plied. So this is more of a DK weight. It's not technically suitable for socks. But I thought that you might want something a little bit special because this is the only skein of this in the world. So I think going forward, most of the prizes that I'll be giving out for any of the cows, mals, whatever that we do, will be hand spun yarn from myself. Yeah, so I will have contacted you by the time this goes up, and so I can get your details. Please check your Ravelry inbox for my message from my personal account. So quick thing about the personal account, I've noticed, I've been mentioning the personal account on purpose. And that's because the Worsted Fibre Podcast Fibre, like Ravelry page, is going to be renamed to the Belfast Mini Mills page. I'm not going to go to too much detail about all of those things, but what I'm trying to do is like divorce some of the, just divorce more of the things from the Worsted Fibre Podcast from the Belfast Mini Mills page. And it just so happens that it's easier for me to rename the Worsted Fibre account to the Belfast Mini Mills account than for me to create a new Belfast Mini Mills account, transfer a bunch of stuff over. So I'm just going to be, transferring the ownership of the podcast's message board to my personal account, the Troy Martin 7 account, in the coming weeks while I figure out how to do that, and renaming the Worsted Fibre account to Belfast Mini Mills. So that way Belfast Mini Mills has the Ravelry page that controls like what it says about the yarn that we make. Because, well, I mean, we know what's about our yarn, right? Anyway, so that's a quick little note on that. Yeah, so congratulations, Knitting Nanny. I'll be sending this out to you as soon as I get your details. Without further ado, let's get into our stitch tutorial today. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to do 3 different cast-ons for a straight edge cast-on. Hello. Welcome to the tutorial part of our episode. I'm going to be showing you how to do a few different cast-ons here with just a ball of some yarn that I got here. I'm hoping that the white on black needles will be clear enough for everyone. Let me know if another color combination is better suited for these tutorials. But without further ado, so the first one I'm going to teach you, or the first one I'm going to give you the reminder on, is what's sometimes called the backwards loop cast on, the E cast on, that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a slip knot. So to do a slip knot, we're going to take our yarn, wrap it around once, make your slip knot by pulling the loop through. So it's kind of like an overhand knot with a little loop in it. And there we go. First stitch cast on. So in this cast on, the slip knot counts as your first stitch. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold your working yarn. So this is the yarn that's ending towards the ball. Your tail is over here. I just like to hold it against my needle to keep it out of the way. So to do the backwards, you're going to grab your yarn. You're going to take your thumb, go over and around. So that way you've got a little twist there. And you are going to pick it up using your needle. And then you got one loop here. So you can do that again. So over and around. And you can just keep casting on. So that's 4 stitches. It's a really fast cast on. Yeah. So things that you want to keep in mind when you're doing this cast on is that this motion is going to untwist your yarn if your yarn is plied S twist. So most commercially spun yarns is spun Z and plied S. So using this cast on, as you notice, it's starting to untwist my yarn. So if I just do a bunch of stitches over and over and over and not let that twist back into the ball as a whole, it starts to untwist here. Okay? You will find that if you are doing this left-handed, so if you switch everything, it's going to add twist just because of how things work here. So keep in mind that when you're doing this twist, that you want to not hold on to your yarn all the time. You want to get some of that twist to return into your knitting by letting go every so often. So every 3, 4, 5 stitches. So that way you still have some twist in your yarn. Because if you look really close, I don't know, it's going to let, yeah. If you look really close, that some of my stitches here start with a nice amount of twist. And then as I get towards the end here, you can see that this yarn that I'm using is starting to unply. And then it's going to be a little troublesome to pick up your stitches here. So that's a little pro tip. And then when you're working with this type of cast on, let's pull this in way so you can see, this type of cast on does not count as the first row of knitting. So when it tells you to cast on 40 stitches and you use this cast on, then you cast on and then you start with row 1. So a thing that you'll keep in mind for this cast on here is, one, if you've unplied it like I have here, you're going to be splitting your stitches quite a bit. So you want to keep that in mind. And the other thing you want to keep in mind here is that as you are working the first row of this cast on, if you are pulling your stitches too much, you're going to have a really hard time. Because what I just did there is I'm knitting here. If I pull this out, it's going to tighten up this bottom stitch here, and you're going to have this great big long strand. And then it's going to make it harder to pick up your stitch there. Okay? So you want to make sure that you keep that in mind, that you keep your work close to the tips of your needles, as close as you can comfortably keep them. So that way you don't end up with like great big long ladders in here. If you drop a stitch here, it's hard to know where to pick the back up. It's a bit of a pain in the butt to make it work well. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your working needle, go under it and pick it up like that. And then you're going to take your offhand needle and you're going to pick up the back. And the reason why you do it that way is you want to have your stitches going, like looping the same direction. It's not super important. You could pick it up the other way, go this way. But you'll notice that it's mounted different. This one comes up, down this way and back around, and this one is going from behind up and around the other way. It's mounting your stitch in properly. So you do want to go under your stitch and pick it up like that, so that way it mounts it properly. So that's how you fix that. So that is the backwards loop cast on. So the next stitch that I'm going to teach you is a knitted cast on. So the knitted cast on starts exactly the same way. You're going to go ahead and put a slip knot onto your needle. So now that the slip knot is on the needles, what we're going to do is we're going to take our working needle, we're going to insert our needle as if to knit. We're going to knit, and we're going to pull this loop a little long. We're going to keep this on your needle. We're going to pull it a little long, and then I like to open up the stitch this way. So the front, the closer part is going up, the back is going down, and then I place it on my stitch that way and pull it tight. No, taut, not tight. So that's one cast on. Two cast on. It's not super important which direction that you pick it up on. Like, you can put it on this way as opposed to this way, like I'm putting it on. But I find that it looks better this way. Your stitches aren't mounted improperly doing it this way. But the most important thing is that if you're going to pick one or the other, just keep doing it. Just keep doing which one that you started with. Your slip knot counts as the first stitch, and you just go ahead and you just keep casting on. So this is a cast on that, again, it does not count as the first row of knitting. So you need to start with row 1 if it's telling you to do this. And this is a stitch that has a little bit more body to it. It's easier to knit the first row. I find it also doesn't have nearly as much of a problem of adding or removing twist like the backwards E cast on does. And it's easier to navigate. The tricky thing is that once you've dropped your stitch, you've got like this loopy looking thing going. So you just need to know where to pick up your stitches, right? So the way that I'm doing it, how I'm mounting them, is that I'm just picking it up and then I'm just mounting my stitches the way that I would always see my stitches, where it comes out back behind the needle, up over the top, going to, in my case, the right. Yeah, so that's how you fix that. If you pull it super tight, it's a little bit more forgiving because it doesn't let you keep pulling it really tight. So you can just pick it up and put it back on your needle. Yeah. This cast on is not a very stretchy cast on. So I wouldn't use it for anything that requires a stretchy cast on. So like a hat or the sleeve to a cardigan or a sweater or anything like that. But if you want like a simple, easy edge for a scarf, something that doesn't require a lot of stretch, this is a good cast on. All right, so the final cast that I'm going to teach you today is the cable cast on. So it's very similar to the knitted cast on. So we are going to start it exactly the same way. So we're going to put a slip knot onto our needle, and then we're going to switch hands, and we are going to insert our hook as if to knit, exactly like the knitted stitch. Okay, and we're going to knit, pull it long, and attach it. All right, so that's where it's exactly the same. And now where it changes for the cable cast on is, instead of knitting into this loop, we're actually going to put our needle through between this stitch, our slip knot, and our next stitch. So you can see here, I've got both sides of that stitch there. I'm not knitting into the stitch, I'm knitting between the two stitches. Okay, so I'm going to knit and pull up a loop like I would anyway, pull it long, just like the knitted one. You're going to put it on your needle. So just make sure that you're going through. There's your V, and you're knitting. Nope. And so on and so forth. So you're going to go ahead and cast on. So this cast on is a little bit stretchier than the knitted cast on. I wouldn't say it's a stretchy cast on, but it is one of the stretchier ones. I like this one as a cast on edge for a blanket or for a scarf, or if you need to pick up stitches and you don't want to do a provisional cast on and you're just doing like a stockinette edge, this is a great one to pick, because the way that these stitches here, they kind of like curl around itself once it's been knitted on, and those little curls are really easy to pick up. This, like the knitted cast on, doesn't add or remove much more twist from your yarn any more than knitting does. So if you are a Western style knitter like me, when you knit with a S-plied yarn, like what I'm showing here, which is a commercially spun yarn, it will tighten up as you knit with it. When you are working this stitch and you drop a needle, if you're working your first row after casting on, when you drop the stitch, this one's a little bit of a pain in the butt. So if you dropped a stitch, that's what happens. So it's a pain in the butt to fix, truth be told, because you need to go back into here, draw up your loop, or not back in there. You need to go into your stitch, wrap, pull up a loop, insert it, and there, it's fixed. Still have this huge long strand here. So unfortunately, this one is not as forgiving when it comes to your first row. If you drop a stitch like I just did there, which is, to give it credit, is really hard to do with this particular cast on. But if you do lose a stitch and you accidentally pull it tight like that, just rip it out and start over. Okay? Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Welcome back. So today, I also, one of the things that I wanted to do with the podcast, so that way I had something to talk about other than just, like my music stuff. Just so that way there's kind of like a through line for viewers to actually watch our podcasts going forward in sequence. So that way you can actually see an overarching like thread. Okay. And one of the things that I had mentioned there in the Christmas vlog is that I'm going to be teaching a masterclass on lace knitting this week, or for the next little while. So because of some time constraints, I'm not going to go into great detail until the project-based class here at the end of the month. So that way you have some incentive to go watch that. Because just so that way you have some incentive to go watch that. What I'm going to be doing today is just talking about what lace is. Okay. All right. Sorry about that impromptu break there. I was not keeping an eye on the time and it stopped recording. So I'll have to cut some stuff out. But anyway, what lace is effectively is it is a fabric that is mostly ornamental, mostly for aesthetic purposes and not for practical purposes. And there are a number of different types of laces. So I will be talking about knitted lace, but there is crocheted lace, there is bobbin lace, there is machine-made laces, all different kinds of laces. But effectively, it is a fabric that is made from thread or yarn that is done in a aesthetically pleasing way to create open work or designs and texture, and it's used as finishing. Very rarely, unless it is an accessory, for example, it is very rarely used for clothing in general. It's more of a finished item. If there's lace all the way throughout, it's usually an accessory, like a scarf or a ruffle or a shawl or something like that. Since I'm going to be talking about knitted lace, that's where we're going to start. So there's a few different schools, I'll call it, of lace making. So the two that most people know about, and that's the ones that one I know most about, and the other one I've only just learned recently doing some research here, but I am going to be trying my hand at that later. Of knitted lace is Shetland lace, and then a Russian style of lace making called the Orenburg shawl style. So they're both lace styles where you are working with really fine fiber. And the idea is that it needs to be light, it needs to be airy, you need to be able to see things directly through the lace. And dependent on the style, there's other characteristics. So for example, Shetland lace has a style of lace called wedding ring shawls, where the shawl is so fine that despite its huge size, that you can pull the entire shawl through a wedding band because it is that fine and that airy. That is the idea that I'm going to be doing with this yarn here, is that I'm making a really fine thread. So that way, when I do make my lace later, that I hope that I can pull it through a wedding band or a ring of some kind. So that's what I'm going to be basing this masterclass over the next few months on. Lace generally speaking, takes a really long time to make. I couldn't find any specific details of the earliest examples of knitted lace. But what I was able to find is that lace in general, so bobbin lace specifically, has its beginnings in Italy around the 1500s, and it was made out of thread, usually silk, sometimes linen, sometimes cotton. The finest of this work was done for royalty, nobility, and it was used for ruffles, edgings on, bonnets and dresses and all sorts of those things. Knitted lace has more of a history, it seems, in the northern part of the world. Not to say that there isn't history elsewhere, but what I was able to find is that most of what I was able to find was about Shetland lace knitting, and Russian lace knitting, specifically like the Orenburg shawl style. There's also Irish lace, which is a crocheted lace. I don't know too much about that, and we'll be looking more into that later on in the year. But these are the two styles that I'm going to talk about today. So the Shetland style is, what most of us who are into knitted lace is what we're referring to without realizing that's what we're referring to. So that's where we have like triangle shawls, geometrical shawls. It's open work, so it's usually like yarn overs and decreases to create holes in different patterns. It's usually what we're referring to, right? And that's where like our edgings that's where the cool edgings come from. That's the kind of style. And there is a specific type of Shetland lace knitting that's called wedding ring shawls. That is a mark of a very skilled lace knitter, that they are not only able to spin, because they would spin their own, fiber, usually Shetland wool, but spin their own fiber, and that the testament of a skilled knitter and spinner is that they were able to spin a thread so fine and knit their lace with such skill that once the lace was completed, they would be able to pull the entire shawl through a wedding band. I've done lace pieces like that before. So the wedding shawl that I made for my sister there back a few years ago, had it not been for the beads in it, I probably would have been able to pull it through through a wedding band or her wedding band. But I did not spin that yarn. That was a commercially available silk that I actually got from Belfast Mini Mills before I worked there, that I bought. I bought a couple cones from them to make these shawls. And then the other style, which is one that I kind of want to get into and kind of play a little bit with, is an Orenburg shawl, which is a Russian style of lace knitting, which similar to the Shetland style, where it needs to be very open work. It's very fine. One of the characteristics of Orenburg shawls is that it's typically squares or rectangles. Much of the time worked from the center, but it's geometrical shapes. So you'll see like squares and like star points and stuff like that knitted in by using the decreases. And it seems to be more focused on the lines that the decreases are making. And the work is so fine and so airy that you can easily see someone from behind the shawl. So the Orenburg shawls, not always, but were sometimes massive. So we're talking like 5 feet by 5 feet. So for us who are metric, that would work out to be about 150 centimeters, so 1.5 meters on either side, square. So it was a huge work. I couldn't find anything about how fine it was being like pulled through a wedding band or anything like that. But that's it's not important for the style. And what current styles what current makers tend to be doing now, and when I say current, I mean in the last couple hundred years, what they do is they are spinning goat hair because it's made out of mohair. Orenburg goat hair is actually finer than a lot of different types of wool, and it's more durable. And what spinners are doing is they are spinning a single out of the goat hair, and then they are applying it with a strand of a commercially spun silk, and then they're making the shawls out of this Orenburg mohair and silk blend, because it's just a strand of each, 100% each, so it's a 50-50 blend effectively. And they're knitting the shawls out of this. And some of the work is just stunning. In future episodes, I'll be going a little bit more in depth about what the lace knitting looks like. And I'll be drawing a lot of my information from my Shetland lace knitting book. And I will be drawing from the resources that you can find from Wikipedia. So that way I can get a little bit more first researchers information there. I will be putting those sources down in the description once I get into more the nitty gritties, as opposed to just like an overarching view of what lace is and what I'm going to be talking about here over the next few weeks. Yeah. So I wanted to quickly talk about a few of the things that I got for Christmas. So I have a bit of a yarn haul, which is hopefully the last thing that I buy here until I have finished my Knickers dozen. We'll see how that works out rather. So the first thing that I got for Christmas from when it comes to yarn is, well, of course, the Nerds with Needles Coastline DK. Thank you, Lex. Thank you, Teresa. I also received this, which I believe is the Nerdy Sock Base. And this one is a happy accident. I'm not sure what dye job this was supposed to be. I don't care because I love this. It's very much my colors. I'm very excited to do something with this, but this will go probably in my stash until I have found a project for it. I might make socks. I might make a hat. I don't know. I have another, I got another thing from Kat Montgomery. And truth be told, I don't know where I put it. Sorry, Kat. So I got a really nice book called, a really nice sock book where it's making its patterns for socks using hand-painted or self-striping yarn specifically. And it is by... The name escapes me. It's on your screen. She gave me a book because she knows the author, and Kat was able to get quite a few of these books. So if you follow Kat on Instagram, you could probably wrangle a copy of it from her. Or if you're here on the island, I actually went and I delivered a number of copies of these books, an entire bag's worth, probably a dozen copies, to Knitpickers PEI there in North Rustico. I do believe that Margaret is going to be selling those books, so they won't be free, but they shouldn't because it's a lovely book, and you can pick up a copy there. Yeah. The next thing that I got for Christmas, I got two balls from Felice and Harmony. This was a Christmas gift from my mother. Thanks, Mom. A couple balls of Felice and Harmony in the Regia sock yarn, and this is the Arnie and Carlos colorways. A couple of the Arnie and Carlos colorways that had been released from Regia. So I don't want to be too critical. I'm not disappointed about the sock yarn because I like the sock yarn, and I'm not disappointed with the colors because I like the colors. The thing that I'm a little, I feel like I'm being harsh here, but the thing that I was surprised by is that this isn't particularly different from any balls of Regia sock yarn that you can buy in the store. So this is the Arne and Carlos Regia. Cover my face. Arne and Carlos Regia. Yeah, and I was a little disappointed is a bit of a strong term, but it doesn't look really any different from anything else. The colorways are nice. The colorways feel safe is how I'll put it. They feel really safe. It's nothing that I'd write home about. I don't know. I had high expectations for this, which like Arne and Carlos are fantastic designers. They have really good color stories. And I'm underwhelmed at the colors here. Maybe my tune will change once I've actually started using this yarn. The neat thing about this yarn is that like there's actually like a break halfway through, not like a cut, but like a break in the self-striping pattern halfway through this yarn. So that way you can line your socks up. So that way you have socks that match perfectly, which is a really cool feature of the Regia line of sock yarn. They've been doing this for a little while with their self-striping sock yarn. Yeah. So I don't dislike the colors. I like the colors. I'm just underwhelmed at the colorways because they feel really safe, which, you know, maybe I shouldn't be too harsh about it, because the thing is that being safe means that it's probably profitable and more people will feel comfortable buying it, because not everybody's going to go buy something as psychedelic as this, and I'm one of those people. And not everybody's going to make a purple and green sweater like I am. So I understand that I have a little bit more wilder eye for color than some others would, despite I'm wearing all gray today. Yeah, I was a little surprised that these colors feel so safe. Yeah. But again, my tune may change once I've finished knitting them. Yeah. So the pièce de résistance of my Christmas haul this year is actually not a knitting related thing. It is a crafting related thing. So you may remember last year for Christmas, my now roommate, but just friend before, Jessie, made me my ball sack. So it is the cross stitch ball sack with the pirate skull and bones on it. Really well done. And I use it for some bigger projects now. It is currently sitting over on the other side of my room with stuff in it that I don't want to talk about just yet. Spoilers. But she, as part of like our little trade off of like Christmas gift sort of thingy, she found a knitted sweater that she wanted. I've talked about it at length, the Sylphide jacket. The details are down in the description. I'm going to be knitting that for her in the next few months. The only big project that's ahead of it right now is the Raga sweater, and that's because I'm a sleeve away from being done. I might as well just finish it. But she is making me a 3-piece suit. And then the plan was to pay the other person what the difference of the project cost is. So the gift is the time that we're taking to make it, and then we pay each other for the materials, right? So it turns out my project that I'm making for her is a lot cheaper than hers, because I just bought 9 balls of yarn and I bought some buttons, and then the rest of the time is just going to be me making it, right? The 3-piece suit that she's making for me is a linen 3-piece suit. So it's a black linen 3-piece suit. So that way, when I am performing in the summer, I don't sweat horrendously because I'm wearing a very thick wool suit. So she's making me a linen suit. So I have a light suit to make. And she finished the waistcoat. So Jessie is like me. She likes having some whimsicalness in the things that she makes. She's not big about color like I am when it comes to color combinations, but she does really like textures and prints and stuff like that. So she picked some pretty psychedelic linings and backings for my waistcoat. And that's where she got to do all of her playing, because the black suit that I want, it just needs to be a really plain black suit. I can't stick out like a sore thumb on stage. It needs to match the other suits and jackets and whatever, right? So she's making me a black linen suit. And then for the waistcoat, which is what she gave me for Christmas, she got to play with it. And that's, of course, what she did first. Oh. So, I pull it off the bed. Wrong. So it is a cute little waistcoat, so like a vest. I keep calling it a vest. She keeps correcting me, saying it's a waistcoat, not a vest. I don't know what the difference is, but I'm just going to call it a waistcoat. So that is the front of it. And then you can see there the lining. It's all music lining, all on the inside. So that way, like when I'm wearing it, no one's going to see that. And then the back of it, it's hard to see, but I'll bring it up closer to the camera. They're clarinets. They're clarinets. Because I'm a clarinet person. I play the clarinet. Anyway, so yeah, I really, really like it. It fits really well. And there's like the little thing here in the back. So that way when I want to tighten it up a little bit to, not make a corset-like effect because it's not sturdy enough to do that, but to like pull some things in, I can do that. So the front is the same linen that the rest of the suit is going to be. So it's not a pitch black suit, but I didn't want a pitch black suit. But it is a nice linen there in the front, and then it's all cotton underpinning, and then the thread that she's using is also cotton thread, and then the buttons are horn buttons, which is kind of fitting because they're last one. Anyway, our horn buttons. So Jessie has this thing about using synthetic things when she does her sewing. She doesn't, which I can relate to. So nothing in here will be synthetic fibers. That is not a request that I had made because I personally don't really mind a little bit of synthetics in my clothing, especially this kind of clothing where I'm not going to be washing it all the time. But she's really big on making sure that she's not putting microplastics into the waterways. So this will be an entirely natural suit. It needs to be pressed because what had happened, and I got little pockets, just little pockets. Anyway, what had happened with this is Jessie was working on it, and it's mostly hand sewn. I'm not really sure even if she used her sewing machine with it at all, but yeah, it's mostly hand sewn. And she was planning on taking it to a family gathering and finishing the last little bit, which was just putting the buttons on. And I think something else. I think she was finishing the pockets or something like that. And before she left to go to the family thing, she forgot to mark where the buttons go. And she didn't take her pattern with her so she could do so, or any of the other materials. So she didn't end up finishing it there for me for Christmas. So I got to roast her for the first couple of hours of Christmas Day, telling her that she didn't get me anything for Christmas, and I got her 2 things for Christmas. Yeah, so I'm really, really pleased with this. I've worn it. I haven't worn it on stage yet. I was going to wear it for the Wind Symphony reunion that we had there after Christmas, which went really, really well. I'll give you more details on our next major podcast because this one's running a little long. I was going to wear it, but the black that this is and the black that my current jacket is different enough that it looks off. So I did not wear this. And then the other thing is that like my belt loop, like my belt buckle sits here. So when I was wearing my white shirt, you could see a little bit of white shirt right there. I didn't like that. So it's just the style of the waistcoat. So because of that little white thing and the blacks weren't perfect, I decided to not wear it. But I will wear it as soon as I'm wearing something that is just all black, just so that way I can wear the thing that I got. Yeah. Which hopefully in February when I sing again is when I will be wearing this. Thank you for sharing your time with me and to come watch my podcast. The first, hopefully the first of many solo podcasts here on the Worsted Fibre Podcast. At the request of some of the subscribers there last month, to not be done with ratings, even though I do feel they're a little narcissistic when I do it myself. I will power through it and do it anyway. So today I'm going to rate this. I really should think about what rating I'm going to do before I give the whole speech. Okay? I'm going to give it 1 out of... I don't want to give it 1 out of 3 because that's a low rating, but I'm going to give it a 1 out of 1 waistcoat by Jessie because she did a fantastic job. And I hope to see you here in a couple of weeks with our next podcast. If you still think that I'm the worsted, comment down below, like this video and share it with your friends. And I will see you guys in a couple of weeks.